On the morning of 22nd November 1971, as tensions surged along India's border with East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, the Boyra salient had already transformed into a fierce battleground. India and Pakistani forces clashed intensely on ground, with India's 45 Cavalry Regiment deploying the agile PT-76 tanks against Pakistan's M-36 Chafees squadron. By midday, Indian forces had already decisively turned the tide, knocking out 13 Chafee tanks. Just a few miles away, at Damdam Airport, a group of young IAF pilots from the legendary No. 22 Squadron prepared for a mission that would etch their names into the history. They were ready to do what they had been trained for, defend their nation's skies with unwavering courage and touch the sky with glory. Welcome to the first podcast. ये वो दिन था जब 1971 के युद्ध के दौरान भारतीय वायुसेना के जाबाज नैट पायलट्स ने पाकिस्तानी सेबर्स को इंटरसेप्ट किया और ये एयर कॉम्बैट हमारे इतिहास में बॉयरा डे के नाम से लिखी गई. In the ensuing dogfight, 4 Nats of 22 Squadron shot down 3 Sabers, 2 of them crashing on Indian soil and the pilots taken prisoners of war. The squadron was rechristened as Saber Slayers and decorated with battle honors for the air offensive for liberation of Bangladesh. एक तस्वीर आज भी लोगों को याद है. नैट के सामने खड़े बॉयरा डेज के हीरो फ्लाइट लेफ्टिनेंट मेसी सुनीत सोरेस, फ्लाइट लेफ्टिनेंट गणपति और फ्लाइंग ऑफिसर लजारस. साथ ही उनके साथ थे इस कॉम्बैट मिशन के फाइटर कंट्रोलर फ्लाइट लेफ्टिनेंट बागची. बॉयरा डे में उनकी जाबाजी के लिए मेसी, गणपति, लाजरस को वीर चक्र से सम्मानित किया गया और इस कॉम्बैट के कंट्रोलर बागची को वायुसेना मेडल प्रदान किया गया. It is our honor and privilege to present to you the 2 legendary Boyra boys, Group Captain Donald Razaris, Veer Chakra, and Wing Commander Suneet Francis Soros. And if I may ask, like it came to be known as Saber Slayers much later, what was it called then?
Well, it was called Health Angels. Don't ask me the background.
That is an interesting name and it gives me goosebumps.
I think basically the initial flight lieutenants in Bareilly, one of them was Adi Gandhi, and I think he was a little fond of that name, especially the riders with the helmets and the black. So he decided to say it's the Hell Angels. But right. Yes, it fitted us in a way because we used to wear black overalls most of the time, and with the helmets it was okay.
Just correct me if I'm wrong, the squadron went on to induct different types, where you said Ajit, and then later on I think MiG-27 came in, and it kept operating between these bases of Bagdogra, Kalaikunda and Hashimara. That it was in 1985 when the squadron got its first crest. Official crest, and that time it was President Gyani Jail Singh who conferred or signed that crest actually. And that is the time when the motto Sahasam Vijayate actually came into existence.
This came about.
And I must share this fact file with our audience. While I was doing my research, I learned that the present Chief of Air Staff, Air Chief Marshal A.P. Singh, had commanded the squadron from July 2002 to August 2004 and went on to become the Commodore Commandant of the squadron. So, sir, when you look back, how significant is Boyra Day in your life?
Oh, it's my life. Wow. Really speaking, one of the highlights of my life as such, and of course my career in the Air Force. And where will you get a chance to fight a war, number one? Okay. And even before the war, shoot down 3 sabers without any loss. And that is what I keep on repeating, without any loss to our own squadron. One of those rare instances where a battle was highly one-sided.
To give you all a little background on the ground battle in Boyra, the first fighting broke out at Boyra Peninsula on 21st November, when a group of Mukti Bahini, assisted by Indian Army elements, had established a foothold in Pakistani territory in Battle of Garibpur. The Pakistani army brought in a squadron of M-36 Chafee tanks into the battle. These were promptly taken on by a squadron of PT-76 tanks from the 45 Cavalry Regiment. In the ensuing battle, 13 of the Pakistani tanks were knocked out for a loss of 4 of our tanks. To counter this reversal on ground, the Pakistani Army commander called on for air support, and this materialized the second day of the battle, that is on the 22nd of November 1971. What exactly happened? Sorry, sir, I would request you to elaborate on that, about when it all started, when the balloon was to go up. How did it unfold in the squadron?
Okay, right. So this was on the 21st of November. Just as you said, the Indian Army had moved into Bangladesh territory, and the Pakistani Army asked for help. So I think at that time 2 aircraft came to do a recce initially, with the intention of doing ground attacks a little later on. And this was the time when the 2 aircraft at Dum Dum was scrambled and went to the border to do some patrolling duties. In the afternoon, Wing Commander Sikand was called to the station commander's office and was told, take 4 more aircraft because we expect the bubble to burst tomorrow, and take your senior most pilots. So 4 of us took off in the afternoon and went to Dum Dum, now making 8 aircraft in Dum Dum, which was a tremendous thing because we were parked out on the open except for the 4 blast pens, and there was also sandbag blast pens, not the best of protection. So Tayal came back, Donnie was in Dum Dum, and next morning started the fun. Wing Commander Sikand was leading with Donnie as his number 2, which was always the case throughout the war. Massey was number 3, Gunnar was number 4. Correct, Donnie? Yeah. Absolutely right. So 8 o'clock or so was the first scramble, but by the time they reached the target area, the Sabers had gone back. In the second one, the same formation went, but this time Ganpati spotted a Saber which he found was landing at Jasor, but somehow the other Wing Commander Sikand did not spot it and he came back. Then that day, 22nd November, was Wing Commander Sikand's birthday. Okay. So he decided that he will go and have a beer with his friends.
22nd is a significant.
22 squadron was significant on 22nd because it was Sikand's birthday, it was also Pashupati's birthday, and that was the day we shot down the Sabers. So he decided to go for lunch, and therefore I slotted in. Since I slotted in as the junior most of this 4 of us, Massey took the lead because he was the senior most flight lieutenant. I was his number 2. Gunnar became number 3 and Donnie became number 4. Number 2.
We will come there, sir. But since the heat is rising, and I would like to cool it down a little bit, asking about what was the setup like, sir? If you would like to tell us where were you operating from, and how best of the conditions, although you told us it was all, scorpions and snakes riddled.
That was in Kalaikunda.
Okay.
When we came to the international airport at Calcutta known as Dum Dum, we were positioned on 2 different areas in 2 pens. Now the pen is a protection. We had sandbags, not a cement thing. In that, aircraft were there on the operational readiness platform at the end of the runway. So we used to be over there, and we had a tent as our dining hall, and we had a blue light in it, so we called it the Blue Fox, because there's a Blue Fox in Calcutta. That's where we used to eat and dine.
Couldn't be better to raise the spirits there.
Including the music.
Including, yeah.
Wow.
And so we were on duty at the pens, and there was a makeshift loudspeaker which was connected to the signals unit. And if we had to take off, we would get what is called a scramble order. And we had to scramble in 5 minutes. So from the tent we were sitting in, we had to run to the aircraft, jump into it, start up the aircraft and get airborne in 5 minutes. That was 5 minutes. That was what our roles were. And when you are flying, the formation that one would fly was, we were taught to fly in what is called broad frontage. That means number 1 and number 3 would be at a distance of about 1 to 1.5 kilometers from each other, and behind them number 2s and 4s would be about 3 to 400. So there used to be a formation 1, 2, 3, 4, like that you go. That was the tactics that we had. So
if you were doing the scanning, how is that scanning thing?
If One
is
is
visual
the
scan.
Visual scan.
Okay.
There's nothing, no radar, etc. We didn't have any of
Okay.
this sophisticated thing.
Mark one eyeball.
Okay.
So, number 2's responsibility was to cover number 3 and 4.
Okay.
That was his area of survey.
Uh-huh.
And number 4's responsibility of 1 and 2. So, indirectly, number 1 was doing the navigation. Number 2's responsibility was to cover the tail of 3 and 4.
Mm-hmm.
If anything came, he was the eye of the formation.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Similarly, number 4 was the eye of the formation if some threat came to number 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
So, that is the tactics that we follow. No radar, no electronic equipment available with us except the radio telephony, RT natters.
So, sorry, sir, you were just talking about, the scrambles that had already happened that day. And I believe there were multiple scrambles that happened. Yeah. What exactly, and you were about to describe final fateful scramble that was happened.
Yeah, so that was in the afternoon. And
so what kind of call do you hear there? I mean, you did. I'm also from air defense. We know how does it go. So what was did you get the initial vectors or height?
We got the initial vector. They told us to scramble, and it was not a standby 2. It was.
And you all ran
we just ran to the aircraft, jumped in.
Okay.
And in fact, I don't think Massey even waited to hear the ATC respond that you could take off. He just said we are scrambling and scrambled. So that gained us some seconds.
Okay.
And,
that's interesting.
Yeah, and also because we were younger, Wing Commander Sikki, of course, was a little older, and he used to use these stairways to climb into the aircraft. We used to just jump in. It's one of the few aircraft in the world where you could actually jump into the cockpit.
Okay,
there is no other aircraft you can jump into the cockpit. All other aircraft have steps or ladders or whatever it is. But the NAT was so low, you could actually jump into the aircraft. And most of us used to jump into the aircraft. So we got this call, and Massey scrambled. I was number 2, Gunner number 3 and 4. And this time, Massey decided to keep low to avoid radar detection and go full throttle. Unfortunately, my aircraft was a little underpowered, being one of the oldest aircraft in the squadron. And the cockpit was not very flush with the rest of the airframe. As a result of which, I found there was too much noise. So I told Massey, I cannot hear anything. Would you like to reduce speed and just step up slightly? So that's what he did. I think by a few knots, we climbed up a little bit. It became a little clearer. And then
the rattling subsided.
The noise subsided. And then Bakchi, our controller, who was for years with us from Barakpur, he gave the target at 2 o'clock, 4 or 5 miles, I don't remember now. And Donnie and Ghana, who were on the right, I thought they would...
So by the time he gave you a call, it was already 2 o'clock?
We were already there. We were already at Boyra. It was 5
Okay.
minutes or maybe, I don't know, 5 into 8:40, Within about 5 minutes we were there. And he gave a call that targets at 2 o'clock, 4 to 5 miles. So we couldn't see it because of the afternoon haze. But I expected Ghana and Donnie to see it, but Ghana and Donnie were more looking to guard us.
Donnie sir, what do you have to add or subscribe or not subscribe to that?
He gave us some good sweet words and asked us to look to the other side, but we couldn't spot it because our vision was on the other side. Fortunately,
I saw a glint of metal. Then I spotted the aircraft.
You were called the eyes of the
I was called the eyes of the squadron. Maybe living in Bandra and all the Sandras from Bandra improved my vision. So I gave a running commentary as to what the aircraft was doing, and Massey decided to fly over the formation on the right, and we got behind the aircraft.
Okay.
Now that the fun started. As we got behind the aircraft, I saw another Saber coming from about 7 o'clock. So I reported that Saber.
So when you say 7 o'clock for our viewers and
7
audience,
o'clock,
it is
it's
behind
7 o'clock on the clock, so it was behind
you.
us. And Ganpati said, contact. So once he had contact, he said, I'll look after it. So he looked after that aircraft. Meantime, we proceeded to have a combat with this aircraft in front, who had been warned by probably this second Saber that there's 2 gnats behind you. So he went into a very, very tight turn. But we managed to keep up with him by using the elevated plane a little bit. And in fact, at the end of the turn, because he had to come out of the turn to build up his speed again, we had gained up to about 800 yards.
Okay.
And that's when the first part of the battle took place, which Donnie will now...
Yes, sir. Over to you, sir.
Yeah. So, first of all, let me explain what the Sabers were doing.
Yes, sir.
their general modus operandi was that they would take off early morning from Dhaka, 4 aircraft, come and attack the area where they were assigned to, this time Boyra, and after that go and land at Jassore, which was close by, to refuel and reload, arm themselves again.
Okay.
So they came at 8 o'clock and went. What happened on this particular day, 4 aircraft got airborne, but one had a problem.
Okay.
So it didn't come, only 3 aircraft had come. So 3 aircraft came, attacked, landed at Jassore, refueled, and 11 o'clock did the second sortie from their side.
Okay.
And we were scrambled for the second sortie also. They finished their attack, and that's the time where Ganapati saw the Saber aircraft near Jassore.
So when they were doing these attacks, do they follow a kind of pattern, or is it like, that like the run in and
Yeah, generally they took it, as though there is no aerial opposition.
Okay.
So they set up a training pattern,
Okay.
which all of us follow for range flying. That means practicing our armament. They were doing the same.
Okay.
Least realizing that they were the little gnats that were coming behind them. So they were in a pattern where one aircraft is in the dive, the second aircraft is positioning about a kilometer and a half behind them, and the third aircraft is getting into the circuit. So it was a circuit they were doing, coming and attacking, and when their armament finished, going back for refueling.
Okay.
So in this case, what was spotted was one aircraft flying this way and then going into an attack. So the shining
So
thing
let's call
was
that Saber 1.
Saber 1. Very correct. So that was Saber 1. And when Massey and Sora saw this, they pulled up above us and went behind.
Okay.
So when aircraft turns, number 2 gets this side. So 2 came. Now number 1 is in the attack, number 2 is behind, and now he sees another Saber aircraft coming behind them.
Okay.
That was the second aircraft.
So and what happened to number 1 here, sir?
Number 1 is pursuing that Saber.
Okay.
And normal this thing is that when you are in a bogie is behind you, you turn into it.
Okay, yeah.
So that's what the Saber did. He turned very massively into it, and Massey and Sue went up because Nat is very good in the vertical plane. Saber is very good in the horizontal plane. So Massey and Sue went up and they came down and fired. In the meantime, the Saber is doing this and Massey is doing this.
Okay.
Okay, so they are in a combat.
And I believe you pulled some 9G there, sir.
Yeah, at the end,
astonishingly.
We were quite astonished to see that we had pulled so much G and we didn't even feel it.
Yeah.
9G is normally when you absolutely black out. But because it was a combat, I was alert all the time. So I don't know about Massey, but I was alert.
And also a fact that would astonish the aviators is that the drop tanks were still on when you pulled that 9G.
Mea culpa. Yeah. Mea culpa.
Yeah.
The cardinal sin we did. We refused.
So, what I'm trying to get at is that the aircraft, despite what you're describing it to be, could pull 9G with the drop tanks there in that combat.
Absolutely.
And you all, in that frenzy,
if we had dropped the tanks, it would have been even better. But none of us dropped our tanks, for which we always regret.
So coming back to the Sid, sir.
Yeah,
now
the situation, one thing I'd like to
number
say
2 is at 7 o'clock.
Number 2 Saber is coming, passing behind Massey and around 7 o'clock. And Ganapati and I were there. So Massey told Gun, look after him. So Gun said, okay, and we had spotted him. So now the situation is, I want you all to visualize one Saber aircraft in a dive, 2 Nats behind us, and the second Saber getting behind the 2 Nats. And Saber 1, Nat 1 and 2 fighting.
Yeah.
Now Saber 2, later on we found out when we debriefed the pilot who had ejected, he thought he is comfortably positioned to go behind the 2 Nats.
Oh, he just didn't
He
notice,
didn't see anything, he was not bothered, probably youngster, he was a flying officer. And Ganapati saw him and positioned himself behind number 2 Saber.
Oh.
So the battle is moving forward, the fighting going on between 1 Saber and 2 Nats, second Saber there, and Ganapati and I. So what had Ganapati to do was to turn a little and position himself.
Okay.
So the battle is moving forward. Now Ganapati turned hard and turned back onto him. During that time, I was slightly delayed in turning along with Ganapati, so I lagged behind to about 600-700 yards. Okay. Normally it's supposed to be 150-300 yards. So Gun took a shot on him immediately and he saw the pilot ejecting. In the meantime, between Ganapati and me, there was a third Saber going.
Saber 3.
Saber 3.
And this a surprise to you, obviously.
Obviously, I was sticking in this thing. Now, before we got the scramble, I must tell you something.
Yes, sir.
Ganapati and I were discussing Now Ganapati was number 2 in the first formation, and I was number 4 in the first formation. So I asked him, Ganapati, you are number 4, I am number 2. Our responsibility is stick, scan, and report. Suppose you see an enemy aircraft, what will you do? So he used very strong 4-letter words and said, so and so the leader, I'll go for the aircraft. Now, the similar situation occurred between Gun and me. Gun was leader, I was number 4, and there's an aircraft in front.
You had to just execute what
I had to say, I said, bye Gun. And I turned my aircraft, but I was very close to him. Very close. Normally, when we are taught, you're supposed to come behind the aircraft at a distance of 800-900 feet, open fire, then close fire at 300 and peel off, otherwise you'll hit the aircraft, etc. But I was so close to him, I had no option. Now, we have to put our guns on fire. We have to do many things in the cockpit. Until today, I do not know when I put my switches on.
So
it was reflex action.
Memory which is operating, subconscious is operating.
Board approaching 80 now. Okay.
Oh yes, we grant you that, sir.
So it was just reflex action. And in a NAT, which is a very small aircraft, if I have to operate switches on this side, I have to use my left hand. I can't use my right.
Basically, you did it this way, and then if you had any switches on the left, you did it this way, because there was no place to maneuver inside. You were like in a bind, absolutely.
Now the question of air defense training. We have a gun sight. This was a gyroscopic gun sight which had 8 diamonds and a pipper in the center.
Okay.
So we were taught, if you see the enemy aircraft, to shoot it down, you have to put the sight on the aircraft, because your guns have to point over there, your bullets have to go there, and the diamonds can be adjusted, the size of the diamonds. So that was with the throttle control. So you had to clip the wings of the Saber aircraft.
Okay.
So you adjust, and the moment you clip the wing and the pipper is there in the center, you open fire. That means you are at the correct range. The bullet trajectory will be such that it will go and hit the aircraft. That is the training that we did in air defense training.
And I hope our audience is able to appreciate, that kind of, it's not hunky-dory there.
I would say this was lightning fast. The way he reacted, Donnie, was lightning fast.
I mean, it was just reflex action. There was no thinking about, bravery, nothing. You just concentrate on that fellow and track your aircraft, and you have to track for 2 seconds, 1,000, 1,000 to open fire. And to open fire, you have to lower the trigger. I did that also. God knows when I did it, but I did it. And I let go. 12 rounds went from my gun, and it hit the target, and I could see, I still can visualize the fire. It was like a big furnace, fire. And what else could I do but just overfly the chap, because I was so close. And I overflew him, and his debris hit my aircraft.
Oh my God.
I could feel the hit of all his metal coming on me.
And anything could have happened.
Anything could
we
have
hear
happened.
bird hits all along. It could have happened.
Anything could have happened.
Yes.
And as I went past
Destiny
him,
was saving you for us.
as I went past him, I found an indication in the cockpit that my fuel transfer light came on, indicating that there is something wrong with my fuel system and the fuel is not going to the engine. And in the meantime, Gunnar had taken a shot on that aircraft, and he turned around and he saw me there, and he said, this debris that had hit, it had hit my drop tank and my fuel was streaming. So instead of the fuel going to the engine, it was going out. So fuel transfer warning light came on. So moment Gunnar said, there's a NAT, he did not know who that was, because I'm supposed to be stick, scan and report. And I said, yeah, that's me. So he said, drop tank. So I dropped my tanks.
Okay.
Now when I dropped my tanks, that's the time I realized that how tall I was. My bone dome hit the canopy.
There I get the answer for my question now. Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
So the aircraft aerodynamic stability was spoiled, and the aircraft kept jumping because the tanks were jettisoned high speed.
And also that got damaged.
Oh yes.
Tank was damaged. Now,
and how bad was the nose when you?
I did not know. The nose also was damaged. Now, in the NAT, there is a emergency procedure. Whenever we had any problem, there is what is called splitting of tail. There is the slab tail and elevator. So, for the good control, you have the full elevator moving. But here we had to disconnect the elevator from the tail slab. That you all can check what it is later on in your analysis of the situation. I did that. And now the aircraft is very sensitive, therefore I could control the bumping of the aircraft. The moment I split the tail, my aircraft became steady.
Okay.
and Ganapati said, look left. I looked left, 9 o'clock, he was there. So we decided to come back. In the meantime, Soros and Massey had finished their combat.
Okay, yeah.
Massey had taken 3 shots on the Saber and they had come down to nearly 50 feet.
Okay.
And that's the time Soros saw something coming out of that aircraft. And you can say what you said.
So basically, after we get the final burst, the ejection procedure on a Saber is a little different from Hunters and Nats. Otherwise, you just pull the handle and you went out. But in the Saber, you had to first
pull
the canopy out and it went out, then you could eject. So we saw that process of ejection, the first part of the canopy flying off, and then we overshot him. So we didn't see the whole ejection process,
in a way.
But yeah.
Yes.
That's the time Massey called out murder, murder, murder.
Okay, that's the famous call that
he has shot down.
got published everywhere.
That's the RT native we used to have. If you shoot down an aircraft, you say murder.
Yeah.
And another RT discipline was when the pilot says contact with the target aircraft, the ground controllers keep quiet. They just give you distance and course to steer to come back to base. So that's the time when the SU plane. Now, when Massey said murder, 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 the ground station came up and said we were flying with the formation call sign of cocktail. Cocktail, check. Cocktail 1, cocktail 2, cocktail 3, cocktail 4, all alive. Wonderful.
Right. Okay.
Then check murder. Cocktail 1, murder, murder. Cocktail 2, negative. Cocktail 3, murder, murder. Cocktail 4, murder, murder. My God. 3 aircraft shot down and all 4 Indian aircraft were safe. And our squadron had a replica of the RT set and they were listening to all that was happening.
Oh, wow.
They heard that. Baliga is not here, otherwise he would have explained what he heard and what he did after that. So, the 1 and 2 were separate, 3 and 4 were separate. So, we now spread out in broad frontage and came. And Ganapati came over Calcutta International Airport and did a victory roll.
I want you to hold there, sir. Before that, let me share with our viewers and listeners that all that combat happened in just 2.5 minutes.
Yeah. That's the thing.
So imagine at that moment, the ground troops, because the combat was happening so low, they were also watching you all, what was happening in the air. When the controller asked you, murder, in that melee, probably controller wouldn't have, had lost the track of who's gone and who's there. So it was very right for him to kind of confirm. And yes, you were coming to that, where what happened over Calcutta. I believe it was a kind of real victory run that you all did, a good beat up that you gave Calcutta and the Dum. Yes, please tell us about that.
So we came at high speed, an international airport, and Gana did a victory roll. Because my aircraft was damaged, I had to fly very carefully. And then air traffic control said maintain circuit discipline. Then Gana, the usual high, language that he used, he told them to keep quiet, and we landed. But the beauty was that our ground crew, who, does everything for our aircraft, prepares our aircraft with guns, this, that and the other, they literally came and lifted us out of the cockpit.
Wow.
It was really very,
what a
very,
surreal feel that would have been. I must also share what, was told to me, or rather narrated by Brigadier Apte, was that when the pilots came down, one of them landed in General Panag's platoon. He was a captain then, with the 6th, I believe, and the other one landed very close to them, and they were captured. So, would you have any idea who shot whom when you analyze the film little later?
Yeah, when we analyze it later, Massey was behind Wing Commander Chowdhury, who happened to not eject but take the aircraft back to, damaged aircraft back to Dhaka. Ganapati had shot down Flying Officer Khalid Ahmed. And my victim was Parvez Mehendi Qureshi. Flight lieutenant he was at that time. So these were the 3 we analyzed later on. And I wish we could have all our fellows over here to sit and chat. However, it's not possible.
And it would be interesting for our viewers and listeners also to know that Flight Lieutenant Qureshi at that point in time was later to be the Air Chief Marshal Parvez Mehendi Qureshi and appointed as Chief of the Air Staff. So, would you have any idea who shot whom when you analyze the film little later? Yeah, when we analyze it later, Ganapati had shot down Flying Officer Khalid Ahmed. And my victim was Parvez Mehendi Qureshi. So these were the 3 we analyzed later on. And I wish we could have all our fellows over here to sit and chat. However, it's not possible. of Pakistan Air Force. What exactly happened, Donnie, sir? Please, we would want to hear it from
what
you.
What happened? We carried on. He was POW. He went back. We lost contact, and we carried on in our career, etc.
Oh, you all never met him as
Never
a
met
POW?
him.
No, we were not allowed.
No, we were not allowed to.
We did not meet the prisoners of war.
And life went on. I continued in the Air Force, and I took early retirement in 91. And after that, I was in Kunur, and I was reading the newspaper in 1993, and I saw a small article saying that Parvez Mehendi Qureshi has become Chief of Air Staff of Pakistan. And that rang a bell in me. I told my wife, I said, look, this is the same chap who was there. So I wrote a DO letter to him, and I just addressed it as Pakistan Chief of Air Staff, Lahore, I think, wherever they have, Rawalpindi, I don't know, wherever they are. A week or 10 days later, I got a reply from his staff officer, an Air Commodore. I was a bit disappointed that, when I've written to the chief, but a week later, I got a reply from him personally.
Okay.
And what I had written was, I told him, I take this opportunity to congratulate you to become the Chief of Air Staff Pakistan. May you have a successful career. In the meantime, of course, I've given up the Air Force and I'm working with orphan destitute children. Our paths had crossed in life. That's all that I've written.
Okay.
And he wrote back and said, yes, I have that letter, but I didn't know that we would had a meeting like this. It's still with me. And all those letters are there, correspondence with me. So that is the thing. So what I would like to say is that professionally, we did our job.
Yes.
But from the humane point of view, we were still human beings, which I hope that spirit continues in life. Wherever you are, professionally, you do what you're supposed to do and do it faithfully. But when it comes to as a human being, there should be a different approach towards each other.
Yes.
I'd like to say something.
Yes, sir.
Generally, there is an impression in people's minds, especially mothers. They say, beta, fighter flying mat karna. But I can tell you, fighter flying or any flying, aircraft are 200% safe.
Yes.
And if you know your aircraft well, and you know what is to be done when, where, you can manage the aircraft and bring it down safely to the ground. So what I can say is to the youngsters, Air Force is a beautiful career. It's an enjoyable career. Kahan fukat ka flying milega aapko? So don't hesitate to join, but be very careful that you learn everything about the aircraft backwards so that there is no problem. And I have flown nearly 16 types of aircraft in the Indian Air Force. I've had emergencies, but it has been saved by God's grace. So youngsters, think about it. Today you have very good aircraft. Make it as a career and serve the nation.
And 22 Squadron will always remain a testament of, an essence of tradition, a testament of courage and valor. The story of Boyra not just wrote one chapter in history, it's a legacy that will always
it's a
continue.
legacy.
So, saluting you all and your services to the nation. And to our listeners, we hope that this tale of bravery on Boyra Day has moved you as much as it has us. Let us take pride in the courage that triumphed that day. And as we sign off, let's remember that our freedom today is built on the shoulders of heroes. From them, I am reminded of a poem by Jagdamba Prasad Mishra. शहीदों की चिताओं पर लगेंगे हर बरस मेले, वतन पे मरने वालों का यही बाकी निशा होगा. I am Vinko Chow, the IF Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Jai Hind.